Hello, welcome back to another edition of the iTutor Math Show. I am your host, Bobby Ozuna. Today is Thursday, February 28th, 2019, filming in front of a live studio audience. Whoa! We are officially live.
One day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the iTutor Math Show. I'm your host, Rebel Math Coach Bobby Ozuna. Again, today's Thursday, February 28th, 2019. I'm really excited. This is the second part of what is now a two-part series, could possibly go to a three-part series, entitled basically The Fundamentals. I don't really have a fancy name for the show, but I'm just calling this The Fundamentals Part 2. I'm building off of last week's show, so if you did not watch last week's show, you're going to want to go back and watch it after this show. But essentially, the whole purpose is I want to start providing parents who at a fundamental level are saying to themselves, I don't know where to begin to start helping my child. Where do I begin? Even if you don't have strong math skills, even if math is not your forte, it's not your favorite class yourself, but you know that you want to start building that strong foundation for your child, you're going to want to catch this show, but you're also going to want to go back and watch last week's show where I talked about 3 things that you can start working with your child now. One is your multiples, 1 through 15, what people call the times tables. But essentially on one sheet, I provide a shot that if you can help your child master their multiples 1 through 15, which includes the exponents of 1 through 15 and your perfect squares 1 through 225, that's going to already start giving your child a really good strong foundation on just general math knowledge they should know. The caveat to that is, unfortunately, it's one of those things that you can do things as I described in last week's video, and I'll touch on a little bit more this week. There are things you can do to make it a little bit more engaging, a little bit more fun, but some of this stuff, because it's fundamental, it's base knowledge, it's information that you really want your child, or if you're an adult student, you really want to know yourself simply because you need to know this content and it's going to make life easier mathematically down the road. But it's just one of those things you just kind of have to know. It's kind of like you have to know your name, your address, where you're from, those kind of things. There really isn't a lot of fun things you can do, but you can try to make it more engaging for your family, so we're going to talk about that tonight. So again, tutor, you want to start helping people. You want to start helping a child master these fundamental elements from the very beginning. So let's move over to the topics. Let me squeeze over there real quick. All right, so next. So again, this is Fundamentals Part 2. So tonight's going to be fractions, decimals, percents. Now, again, I want you to clear your mind. It's real easy for a lot of people that when they see the word fraction, much less decimal and percent, but when people hear the word fraction, or worse, when we see fractions, we go into this little panic mode where we kind of back up a little bit and we got all these reservations because we may have struggled with these things in the past. I want to help liberate that by looking at them for what they are at a base level and having that fundamental knowledge that says when I see them in their different forms. So we're not really going to do any math tonight. So again, if math is not your strength as a parent or guardian, you don't have to have strong math skills to help your child understand the base elements of these things, and it will liberate them later, I promise. So starting with the first one. First one is 1/2. Really simple. It's just a 1 with a line and a 2. 1/2. Everyone knows 1/2. We've got 1/4, we've got 1/3, we've got 1/5, and we've got 1/10. Now what are these, Bobby? These are, again, some of the most common fractions used in most math problems, even in a different format, and most standardized tests when they implement fractions, because remember, standardized tests are timed tests. A standardized test, for the most part, is a timed activity, whether that's the SAT, an ASVAB test to get into the military, a test to get into the police academy, fire, test to get your placement test going into college. Those are all timed tests. The STAR test is the standardized test that's administered in the state of Texas. It's a timed test. It's either 2, 3, or 4 hours. So what is the purpose of understanding that it's a timed test? Well, the significance of understanding it's a time test is knowing that when they've created these tests, They didn't really design them for you to spend a lot of time doing math. Because realistically, if you had to do 3-4 minutes of doing math per problem on a 50 question test, most people would run out of time in a 3 or 4 hour time box to complete that test. So knowing that as a test writer, I know that these are some of the elements that when you see them, you're supposed to know what they represent, which thereby makes the mathematics easier, especially on standardized tests, because majority of standardized tests, we know, have an A, B, C, or D option. Some tests have 5 options. Majority of standardized tests have 4 options. So again, this is general knowledge that you want your child to know, that you want to know as an adult student. And if you're a parent that doesn't feel really confident with math, again, this is a refresher for you. I always preach that the iTutor Math Show is designed to build an environment of learning at home. This is an excellent opportunity for you as a parent to engage with your child and guess what? Learn the math also. I'm a firm believer that if we became more mathematically sound as a nation, we'd be a much different nation just by having these general math skills. So again, we're going to talk about 1/2, we're going to talk about 1/4, 1/3, 1/5, and lastly 1/10. I'm going to keep it really simple. That's all we really have to worry about. So let's look at the first one. So here's your lesson. So again, if you're a parent, you're watching the video, you're watching it live, I don't need you to be writing anything down. I tell my students this all the time, and I'm telling you as a parent, start implementing this in your home. When you're presenting something for the first time, don't worry about taking notes. We're not teaching our children to be stenographers. We're teaching our children to learn, and that means watching the first time. I do something called the silent lecture, which many of you will see later, which I will touch on at the end of this show. But I teach mathematics. The first time I teach an element to a child or to a student, I do the silent lecture. I teach it without any words whatsoever. Why do I do that? Because I believe that most of us have the brain capacity and the aptitude to watch someone perform some steps. Just watch them perform steps, and we can pick up on the steps without ever worrying about understanding what just happened. I'll be talking about that more on other shows. I'll be talking about that. I've talked about it a little bit on previous shows, but I'm telling you right now, if you're watching the video and you're going to relay some of this information to your child, don't spend too much time having them take notes. So here's the first one, 1/2. Here's the lesson for the 1/2. It's really simple. When I see the words 1/2, or if I see the fraction 1/2, I need to know without a doubt, every time I see 1/2, I need to know that is the same thing as 0.50 or 0.5. It's the same thing as 50 cents, and it's the same thing as 50%. Because the word 1/2, the 1/2, the 0.50, or the 50% all have the same value, different form. Why is that important? It's very important. So again, I think I use this analogy all the time. I've used it in teaching for years. I'm going to give it to you again. If you've ever seen the movie Transformers, if you have children and they've watched the movie Transformers, or you're an adult that lives in America, you might have heard of a movie called Transformers. Transformers has a character in the movie named Bumblebee. I picked Bumblebee because there's a movie coming out about him. Most people know who he is. When I ask people, and I ask my students, describe Bumblebee for me, I usually get one of 2 answers. I'll have the side of the room that says, oh, he's a giant alien robot. Or I'll have the side of the room that says, no, he's the Camaro, he's the yellow car, right? Or used to be the yellow Volkswagen Beetle if you grew up in the if you grew up in the 80s. But here's the point: if I get the crowd, if I get the students, or I get the student that I'm working with to give me 1 or 2 answers, that they say Bumblebee is either the walking alien, he's yellow, or he's the yellow car, then that's the perfect setup to explain to them that whether or not Bumblebee is the walking alien or Bumblebee is the car, no matter what form he's in, he's still Bumblebee. The concept's simple, right? Think about it. It's still Bumblebee, whether he's car form or he's the walking alien, same person or thing, different forms. Why is that important? Because that's what we're trying to teach when we're just getting our students to understand that every time they see 1/2, they should think in their mind, that's 1/2, that's 50 cents, or 0.50, or it's 50%. The fraction, the decimal, and the percentage equivalent, or the different form of something we call 1/2. So moving on to the next, the same with 1/4. You or your child, you want them to know that every time they see 1/4, it's the same as 0.25, it's the same as 25%. 1/3, it's not even any more tricky, and depending on where you're at, we're just going to go with multiple answers. 1/3, because it's not evenly distributed. It's taking $1 and splitting it between 3 people doesn't come out perfect. Someone's making away with an extra penny. You're going to teach your child or yourself that 1/3 is always 33 cents or 34 cents. It's always 33 or 34%. Big reason why we don't have a lot of 1/3 sales, because I can't imagine a company wanting to chase down pennies. Who gets the penny? Who doesn't get the penny in a sale? It's the reason why you don't see a lot of things on sale for 1/3 off. You see things for sale for 1/4, 25% off, 20% off, etc. 1/5, same thing. Every time you see 1/5, you want your child to think 20 cents, 0.20, or 20%. And lastly, 1/10. Every time I see 1/10, I want to think of a dime, 0.10 or 0.1. That's a big one because a lot of people confuse. And then 10%. That's it. That's really all you want to do. These are fundamental math concepts that you want to know differently than a child knows their name, the name of the school they're going to. Doesn't matter what grade level they're in. I tell you right now, if you're a college student, you need to know this stuff. This just needs to be general information that you should just be comfortable with, because again, you don't want to panic when you see a fraction. If I see 1/2 in a math problem, I don't want to freak out. I don't want to panic. You don't want your student panicking. What you want is your student saying, oh, that's just 0.50 or 50% or 1/2 of something. Same thing with any other fraction. 1/4, I don't panic. Don't think about things. You see a fraction sometimes. People tell me, every time I see a fraction, Bobby, I start thinking about things like finding common denominators. And apparently, finding common denominators was probably equivalent to the Common Core today, because that still impacts a lot of adults that I talk to today. 1/4 is not, all fractions are nothing more than just a division problem. So what you want to do is help a child that when they see these common fractions, they see them for what they are and nothing more than a decimal equivalent or a percent equivalent. No math involved whatsoever. Pretty simple. Again, you want 1/2, 1/4, 1/3, 1/5, and 1/10, and you want them to be second nature. How can I do that? Start practicing at home. Now again, I told you at the beginning of the show, really can't make this any more exciting. I can't tell you, and if you do know, if there's an app out there that gives you the equivalents over and over and over again, that every time, maybe like a flashcard app of some sort, here's my recommendation. Make some flashcards. Take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, fold that paper in half twice, cut them out, make some flashcards. Flashcards are really, really simple, because what you want is every time your child sees one of these fractions, you want them to think, oh, 1/3. That's 1/3. That's the same thing as 0.33 or 0.34. That's 33 or 34%. All you want to do is condition that long-term memory. You want your child to know what they represent. And here's the thing, as I told you already, that's representing what they are, that's knowing the different forms and the names, and that's not math. You're not doing any math to know that information. So just like a child should know, as I taught last week, just as you want your child to know their fundamental multiples of 1 through 15 as example, your times table, right? Really don't like the term, but we all get it. Just like you want your child to be able to spit out their 8s or their 6s or their 7s or their 12s all the way to 15. 15 is a recommendation, because after that, I mean, most tests aren't going to use anything outside of that, and if you are, you probably have a calculator for that class. That's just the standard. That's the norm. So having a strong foundation in your multiples 1 through 15, the exponents and square roots, and then again, knowing these base fractions, these 5 simple fractions. Every time I see a half, I think 0.50 or 0.5 or 50%. So again, as I said earlier, you can make flashcards at home, something really simple, and then you could also give written test, oral test, or you can role play. What does role play mean? Role play means you be the student. Again, this is an excellent time for you to engage with your child, to have that one-on-one time with your child, because if you show them that the academics and the mathematics is important, by doing it with them, not sending them to the room. Don't send them to the room and say, go study. Don't do that. Because here's the thing, you're not building an environment of learning, you're building an environment that tells your child, it's important to my parent, it's important enough for them to send me away to go do it, but it's not important enough for them to sit down and do it with me. And then again, and this is a hard part as a parent, sometimes as a parent, when we're trying to guide our children and mold our children, it's really easy sometimes to feel like a hypocrite. I know that. I am a parent, 4 children and a beautiful granddaughter. I'm gonna face the same thing with her. It's real easy to feel like if I'm telling them to do something that I'm not doing, you feel hypocritical, and then it becomes that dictatorship type parenting. I'm trying to encourage you that when it comes to academics, when it comes to learning something that you know is important for them, engage with them, get down to that level. That's why I said role playing. Role playing is perfect because then you can say, hey, teach me some fractions, let me try those flashcards, drill me, throw them out. And the oral and written oral tests are great because oral tests require the student to remember the picture of the thing that they saw in their memory, take that picture, translate it to the language or the words that they're speaking out. That's why a lot of people struggle with reading comprehension. We didn't get the picture concept in our mind, which is why I've said in the past, early readers, comic books, and the Sunday comics, if anyone still buys the paper, is a great place to build up reading comprehension skills for any child or adult, no matter what age you are. Because it's the absence of building that picture that translates to the words and the text that's on paper, that then we then translate to explaining what we saw, that basically is the definition of comprehension. So for this type of stuff right here, it's the same. What does that look like, Bobby? It looks like coming home and saying, hey, okay, let's do our practice. Pause real quick. What is the practice? Remember, homework is a negative word. Homework is negative to me as an adult. I say practice because I was a coach for years. I coached baseball and softball. Practice is a fun thing. That's the thing that we got to go put up with, the thing that we have to do to get us better for the big game. Practice is a more positive word, so try using that word when you tell your children, hey, tonight we're going to practice. Now again, what is practice? Practice, in my recommendation, after all the years I've been teaching, is 4 nights a week. If you want to see your child grow mathematically, 4 nights a week, 20 minutes a night minimum, period. 4 nights a week, 20 minutes a night. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Nothing on Friday, because what do we do? What do we do as adults when it's Friday? We tell everybody in social media and everyone we run into, TGIF, right? End of a long work week. Condition your child the same. You did the work all week. You did your 20 minutes a night. You're building those long-term memory skills, and you're practicing something over and over again that I'm telling you as a teacher, as a tutor, as a math coach, I'm telling you is going to benefit your child. So if you did nothing else but follow the information I gave you last week and you followed this information this week, you are setting your child up for success. You are building that baseline fundamental strength that they need to be successful mathematically. And again, it doesn't take any math skills. It takes time. 20 minutes, that's 1/3, 0.33, 33% of an hour. That's 1/3 of an hour, 4 nights a week, to sit down with them and say, hey, we gotta learn this stuff. We just gotta know it. Flashcards and conversations are good. Squeeze in a written test and say, hey, tonight I'm just gonna start calling them out. I'm gonna say out loud 1/4, and they need to write 1/4, and then say, give me the decimal equivalent, give me the percent equivalent, the other form of that fraction. So then eventually in time, when they see the fraction, you want them to reach a place that when they see 1/4 as an example, they don't panic because they don't think about things like common denominators. What they do is they say, oh, that's nothing but the representation of a quarter, or 25 cents, or 25% of something. And then later on, when you start building on those skills of percents and decimals, the comprehension, that light bulb moment of understanding is going to come, because they already have learned the other correlation of what that thing is. That 1/4 is nothing more than 1/4, or 25%, or 25 cents. So written tests are great. You can say, hey, just walk around, sit them down, say, hey, no paper, no writing. Because again, you want to build that long-term memory, but you're also building that comprehension that forces them to go into their mind and remember something and spit it back out to you. And you want to do this over and over again. So you say, hey, tonight I'm just going to ask you, so what is 33%? Give me some other forms of 33%. So what they can say, 1/3, 0.33 or 0.34 or whatever. You want to just kind of do those things. So again, it's not the exciting stuff, but it is something that's very easy for a parent to engage with. It's very easy for a child to learn, but you got to do the repetition. That leads to the last point. How long do I do it, Bobby? That depends on your child. And I say this every week. Do not put time restrictions on your children at home to learn something. The school system already has a mandate. They have a curriculum and a calendar that says they have to teach an element for a certain amount of days, test on it, and move on to something else. It's ironic because, especially at the middle school level, where 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, here's the irony. 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, at least in the state of Texas, is essentially the same math class 4 years in a row. It really is. 5th grade is the baseline understanding what you need for middle school. Middle school, all 3 years, is nothing more than the fundamentals of algebra repeated 3 years in a row. So what's the point of that statement, Bobby? I say it all the time. The point is your children have to learn it. And if they have time restrictions and they're going to come back and do it again later, then why not be the one, out of love for your children, knowing that they're going to need it, why don't you be the one that says, we're just going to practice it until you know it. And knowing it is when they can spit it out, they can resuscitate it, they can repeat it at any time over the course of their academic career because they know it. And it's going to help build a foundation for working with fractions later, and especially standardized tests and tests that have times. They have time tests because, again, as you'll learn later in future shows, those are the most common fractions used repeatedly in most standardized tests. So again, flashcards, written test, oral test, and role-playing. Best thing you can do. So, other than that, again, I'd like to encourage you to go back and watch last week's show. It talks about 3 things that they can start practicing now. Do not put a time limit on your child. If you say to me, hey, Bobby, we've been working on this for 3 months, then if it takes 3 months, awesome. That's 3 months that you did not waste 20 minutes a night, 4 nights a week. That's 3 months that you invested in helping them learn something and know something that they're going to need the rest of their life. And if they ever buy anything on sale, they're going to need it. So with that, I'd like to close out with some exciting news. I'd like to share some exciting news. I'm really, really excited at the conclusion of this show to say that as we're progressing as a show, as we're trying to reach a bigger audience, again, my goal is to reach 1% of the student population in the United States of America between pre-K and 12th grade. There's 51 million children in the public school system in America. I want to reach 1% of that. I want to reach that family who's saying we're struggling, we don't know where to begin, but we're ready to build that environmental learning, and we're ready to help our children grow in areas that we may not have been able to grow ourselves as parents. Part of that is support from people who are watching, the people who are watching on the community brain dump sessions that I do on Facebook Live, and now I'm excited to say my 3 new sponsors. So the iTutor Math Show officially, as of this week, has 3 new sponsors. I announced one of them 2 weeks ago. That's Fort Austin. That's Callie and Rob Brewer. They're based out of Aledo, Texas. They're a managed service provider. They've decided to be our technology sponsors, providing the equipment and any technical support that we need. And then as of next week, I'll be closing on a new sponsor, which is local to the North Richland Hills neighborhood, and the North Richland Hills community right here in my own backyard, and that's Dapper Dan's Barbershop. If you watch my Community Brain Dump show on Monday, I was wearing the hat, my tip off to the team. They're based out of Dallas and North Richland Hills, and they're officially coming on board to be a sponsor to partner with our mission to reach as many families as we can, to help as many families as we can build those environment of learning at home so we can break this math problem that we have in America. And then in the next couple of weeks, I hope to announce a 3rd possible sponsor that can help us pretty much grow so we can reach a wider fan base. So again, I'd like to close out by saying thank you. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for being a supporter. If you follow me on Facebook, connect with me on Facebook, because every Monday night I do the Community Brain Dump sessions. If you're already a subscriber to the show, you see those shows. They're downloaded and posted here on YouTube. If you want to participate on those shows live, it's Monday night, 9 o'clock on Facebook. I'll take any questions, comments people have. We pretty much use the Community Brain Dump session as a relaxed, open forum to help me build the script for the Thursday shows. Again, if you're already a subscriber and you don't want to miss any content, don't forget to hit the notification bell. If you believe in the mission and the vision of the iTutor Math Show and what we're trying to do to change mathematical education in America to better our families, better our communities, don't forget to share. Thank you, and have a good night, and I'll see you next week.